Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My channel is about ancient China with a modern twist. And since Mulan is going to be out on Disney Plus in September, I just cannot resist the temptation to make a video about her. So Mulan has been very popular as a Disney character, no doubt. But have you ever wondered how the ancient Chinese actually thought of her? In today's video, I will be talking about how and why Mulan was such a popular figure in ancient China, and why we still find her tale so appealing today. But first, a bit of history. Mulan's story originated as a folk song titled simply as the Ballad of Mulan. In the ballad, Mulan dresses up as a man to fight in her father's place in the army and returns after 12 years to a happy homecoming scene. Now, the exact timeline is a bit hard to pinpoint, but we know that her story first appeared in writing around the 6th century AD, which corresponds to the early Middle Ages in Western history. And based on the places mentioned in the ballad, some have speculated that Mulan fought for the Beiwei regime against a tribe known as the Rouran. This piece of guesswork would narrow things down to the mid-5th century. Now, we don't know if she was an actual person or if her story was based on a group of women who took on the roles of men during times of war, which is quite common up to this day and age. But the fact that she was probably fictional did not stop the ancient Chinese from idolizing her. A reason behind this was because she took her father's place in war. So to fully appreciate this fact, we have to understand the role that filial piety plays in ancient Chinese society. Now, if someone were to ask me, what's a feature about ancient China that makes it quite distinct from other cultures, I would say, well, it's the emphasis on filial piety. Filial piety is the idea that you should honor and respect your parents, and not to mention taking care of them in their old age. Now, some might argue that all cultures place an emphasis on respecting your parents, and it was not just unique to the ancient Chinese. But I would say that in ancient China, filial piety was considered so important that it was kind of like the cornerstones of all virtues. In fact, it was so institutionalized that in the Han Dynasty, there was actually a government edict which specified a reward for those who were filial to their parents. And in fact, if you were filial enough and if you were noticed by the local government, you could even get promoted to the position of a court official. So that was just how important filial piety was in Chinese society. And of course, the reverse was true. In history, people have actually got punished because of the perceived lack of filial piety to their parents. So it could actually constitute a crime if you were accused of being unfilial to your parents. So what actually counts as unfilial actions? Well, according to a law in the Tang Dynasty, such transgressions would include listening to music during the mourning period or wearing bright colors when you were supposed to be mourning. So now you have an idea of how important filial piety was to the ancient Chinese. And if you were the government, with a system that rewards or punish people according to so-called filial and unfilial acts, you would need a set of codified behaviours and role models. It was not just that. People needed different role models according to their social status and their biological sex. So by that extension, women actually needed a set of role models who were also women. Now, in this sense, Mulan fitted the mold perfectly. As someone who probably had limited military experience, she could have lost her life in war, and yet she chose to serve in the army in her father's place at the expense of her own life. So that was considered as being really filial to a very high extent in Chinese society. And that was not just all. Like, apart from filial piety, a very important virtue in ancient Chinese society is loyalty, or in other words, service to your monarch. However, filial piety and loyalty were sometimes considered to be at odds with each other. So, as a popular saying goes, 忠孝难两全, which roughly translates into it is hard to be filial and loyal at the same time. And yet, Mulan actually managed to do both of it. So that made her quite a legend in Chinese culture. But Mulan's success was hard to replicate. Women in Mulan's era had considerable influence. Like, they could go around filing lawsuits and petitioning on their husband's behalf, or go job hunting for the sake of their sons. But women who came after Mulan did not necessarily enjoy the same kind of social status and freedom as she did. And yet that did not stop them from idolizing Mulan. And when I say idolize, I mean it quite literally. Temples were erected in Mulan's name, and people wrote poems and epitaphs and memorials in her memory. But times changed and people began to want to know more about her. They wanted to know who she actually was as a person and not a goddess one could only worship from afar. So there were so many questions that were unanswered by the original ballad. Where did she learn how to fight? Well, it was kind of implied that her family had been in the army for generations. Even so, even if your dad were a veteran, you cannot just charge in the battle hoping that your ancestors will send a dragon to protect you, right? And how did she spend 12 years in the army without being detected? How did she herself feel about having to dress up as a guy and reverting to her original identity years later? Also, did she find someone to marry? Like questions that would make someone seem more relatable as a human being. People wanted answers to these questions. They did not just want a goddess to idolize. So imagine if DC had made a movie about Wonder Woman, just being so amazing with her superpowers and her golden lasso and leaving the human interest part of the story out. Or if Disney removed Mushu and General Shang and all that singing from the movie. Oh wait, they already did. Okay, they did have a witch. I'm not so sure to think about that. I totally digress, but you get my point, don't you? So, just as how we would write fan fiction about our favorite characters, during later times in Chinese history, that's to say the Ming and Qing dynasties, people's imaginations began to run wild, and they started to write a lot of fan fiction about her. So there are so many versions of Mulan's stories. In one version, there was a woman who thought that she was a guy and actually fell in love with her. In another version, which you might have heard of, the emperor fell in love with Mulan and wanted to make her his concubine, so she committed suicide in protest. In another, the author tried so hard to make everyone believe that they never found out about her identity, that the author actually had some minor characters say something along the lines of, oh, Mulan always peed and pooped away from everyone else, so we don't know what she was up to, and we never realized that she was actually a girl. So I think that's kind of trying too hard, but well, at least he tried. Which also reminds me of this scene in the Disney movie where Mulan has kind of has a tent far away from everyone else. It struck me as rather odd because we are in the military, and are you allowed to have your own alternative living arrangements? That said, now we come to Disney's version of Mulan. And now, time for another question. So China actually had its fair share of actual women warriors who were real people with historical records. So for example, Princess Pingyang, who was the daughter of the first emperor of the Tang dynasty, and she helped her father revolt against the Sui dynasty and establish the Tang dynasty. So she passed away in her early 20s, but she was given a warrior's burial. And I believe she was the first and only princess in Chinese history to be given such a high honor. And also there was Liang Hongyu in the Song dynasty who had command of her husband's troops, and Qin Liangyu of the Ming dynasty who fought against the Zhe Chen for the Ming emperor and was awarded with a really nice robe for her loyal service. The actual artifact is still around today. So these wonderful women fought alongside men, and some of them were even honored in their own right. But why did Mulan, who did not have any historical basis, was made into a Disney animation but not the others? Well, here's my guess. Apart from being this really simple story with a happy ending, the details about Mulan's story is sufficiently vague. While various hints suggest that Mulan's ballad originated during the Beiwei dynasty, the historical details are obscure. It's a playwright's dream come true. It is hard enough to produce a movie about a foreign culture during a different time period for a global audience. In Mulan's case, there is no need to get the historical details exactly right. And if you look at the original animation, Mulan's universe is a mismatch of various time periods throughout Chinese history. So for example, the firearms are Ming, the palace and the appearance of the Great Wall of China was Ming, This is not to say that the Great Wall did not exist for the Ming Dynasty, but the Ming Dynasty did like extensive construction and repair works on the Great Wall, and that's the Great Wall that we see today, and that is the one that is depicted. I mean, it's quite similar to the one that's depicted in the animation. The other girls receiving the matchmaker was inspired by Tang aesthetics, and the Hans, which were not really clear like what tribe they were, but they were presumably modeled after the Xiongnu, who were a tribe during the Han Dynasty of China. So the movie remake tries to stay true to the original historical era of the ballad, but it features this architectural structure which is known as Tulou and is unique to the Fujian and Guangdong regions of southern China, but presumably wasn't around during the Northern Wei dynasty. But above all, Disney has managed to magnify the elements already present in Mulan's original story and create new ones for our modern sensibilities. The need to discover your true self. It is a very Disney concept, but it still kind of fits nicely into the narrative. The love and concern a child has for their parents in a healthy relationship. The sacrifices we make for our loved ones. The need to prove ourselves in the face of prejudice.
You said you trust Ping. Why is Mulan any different?
And of course, the values we appreciate even in this day and age. Courage, determination, and wit. These are qualities that are valued by all cultures in different time periods, and these are the qualities that we still cherish even to this day. Throw in a talking dragon and a group of rock and rolling ancestors, and you have the recipe for a blockbuster. That is, if Disney's movie remake doesn't kill it. That said, I'm still going to watch it and I hope I will enjoy it. So that's all for today, and I hope you enjoyed today's content, and I'll see you next time. Bye!